I wrote a blog post a while ago about why I f***ing hate video games, because this is what it does. It appeals to like the male fantasy.
Hello everybody, and welcome to After Hour. Just so you know, I might leave out some stuff because there's just so much to talk about when it comes to Yakuza, and also I haven't experienced some of these things, so I hope you're doing well, and since you're here, fill up that heat bar and smash in like and subscribe for more. And with that, onto the video. You all know Japan, right? You know, with their nice nightlife and the red light district and their nice places with collectibles like in Akihabara with their anime figures galore. But in Japan, there's one group you must always make sure to stay clear of and don't mess with. That would be the yakuza. Yeah, these people are pretty scary, so scary that you might even lose your fingers over them. So why mess with them when you could play as one? In Japan, there's a game series called Yakuza, and well, the Yakuza series is really successful. And it's made it possible to have so many spin-offs. For example, Yakuza Lost Dead Souls, Ryugaku Online, Judgment, Lost Judgment, Ryugaku Ishin, Kuroi Hoi, Ryugaku Shinsho, Ryugagotoku Kenzan, Kuroi 2, Ryugaku Ashuhera. Today we're going to be talking about Yakuza 0. In this game, you play as the series lead Kazuma Kiryu and the fan favorite Goro Majima. There are also these other characters you'll meet during your playthrough of the game. Also, there's these big guys who do a lot of damage to you, and if you lose them, they take all your money. But if you beat them, you take all their money. So if you're thinking about fighting them, prepare for a fight. There are also some characters that you see in the later title games, as this game is a prequel. Characters that you see in this game that appear in the next game are the lead Kiryu, and Majima, Nishiki, Sera, Kashigawa, and probably some others too. Another interesting thing that comes from this being a prequel is that you get a different version of the characters. And if this is your first game, you get to see how these characters develop into who they usually become in the later series, and how some friendships go from being really good to being really toxic. The supporting characters were great as well, and they're very well developed. They felt like they could be real people that could exist, and nothing helped more than the voice acting. The people who did the voices in this game did an awesome job, and really giving it their all, and really showing some of the real emotion in some scenes. Also, some of the characters in this game that don't do much in the first game have a chance to be cool since they're younger, and they give a different, cooler view on them. Needless to say, the characters in Yakuza 0 are very well developed. You know how I mentioned the very emotional scenes? Well, those are made even better with amazing graphics. The cinematic cutscenes are very well made, and sure, they may be a bit too long, but I think that it's just fine. But if you doubt me on how awesome they are, then let me show you a few.
しゃあないのう。ああ、一丁ケーキのやれや。そこまでお客様がお望みなら、この真島、僭越ながらお相手いたしましょう。ただし、私からは一切手出しはいたしません。何しろお客様は神様ですから。まだそんなこと抜かすかい。なめおってさあ、ショータイムや。なあ兄弟、いい加減にしろって。うるせえ。もうこうするしかねえんだよ。なんでこうなっちまったんだろうな。どっから歯車がずれた。組の命令ってことなのか、錦。そんなんじゃねえ。ん？桐生、お前組の制裁で殺される人間がどういう目に遭うか知ってるか。堂島組ってとこは見せしめの死体を作る天才だぜ。人間がどの程度痛めつければ死ぬのかよく知ってる。それをとことん死なねえように殺すんだ。生かしたまんま。できるだけ長く苦しむようにだ。生きたまま解剖されるような拷問されて、 散々痛めつけられた挙句、そして後になって見つかった死体はもう人間と呼べるようなもんじゃねえ。俺はな、桐生、兄弟としておめえにそんな死に方させられねえよ。
てめえらなんでここが。そうかい。なるようになっちまうもんだな。
くぜえ。己ら全員地獄に送ったぜ。ぶっ殺したぜ。よう、桐生ちゃん。
While those cutscenes are amazing, there are these ones that the characters don't really move their mouths, but you can still hear them speak, and these ones, they're just okay. But I do have to say, for some scenes, like for the sub-stories, the animation just feels so lifeless, and that is one of the very few things in this game I don't like at all. But overall, I think the graphics and animation in this game are really good. I think the best part of this entire game is the combat. It's really a blast to beat a bunch of dudes, especially with how complex the combat is. So there's a lot to talk about, so let's not waste any more time. First, let me start with Kitty. He has many different styles, those being Brawler, Rush, and Beast. With the Brawler style, Kitty lands heavy punches but then it takes a while to hit the enemy again. While the Rush style, Kitty lands fast punches while dodging hits. With the last style of it being the Beast style, which is Kitty much slower but has a wide range and does major damage, and for his blocking, Kitty just stands there and takes hits like a tank. Next, let's move on to Majima. His styles are Thug, Breaker, and Slugger. Thug is the standard punches and kicks, but where things really get picked up is where you use Breaker style. In this style, he does breakdancing while fighting the opponent. I mean, just look at how fun and chaotic this style is. Next up is the Slugger style, where Majima fights with a baseball bat. The best part of this style is that Majima uses the baseball bat as a nunchuck. Just look at how sick and goofy this looks. A cool thing about these styles is they use them for different purposes. An example, you use the Rush style against big opponents because you want to move faster than these big people. But you would use the Breaker style against a whole army of regular enemies. This is because it has a really wide area of attack. Even though each style feels different, the combat, no matter which style, the combat always feels so fluent. Here's an interesting thing that happens when you battle. When you build up a meter called heat, you build up enough meter, you can pull off a heat attack. And this is a cinematic powerful attack that does massive damage. Now let me just show you a short montage of some of these heat attacks. Now let me tell you that all the attacks you just saw were probably just a fraction of the available key attacks in this game. Now, what if I told you you could pull out these devastating attacks and awesome moves on bosses? Now, in this game, there are a few bosses at the end of every chapter, except for a few chapters like Chapter 4 is just as an example. The boss fights in this game are a nice challenge, and as you expect, they get progressively harder, and sometimes in the middle of the boss fight, you might get a quick time event, and if you complete those, you do a good amount of damage to the boss, but I don't know where else to put this, but I gotta say in this game, there's one enemy that just sucks. Those are the enemies with guns. I hate these enemies because as you're fighting others, they just shoot you and stay far away like a dickhead. And they also do a lot of damage, and you just get stunned, you have to mash the button just so you can play again. And it really just gets really annoying after a while, and that's all I had to say. You know, this game, the plot gets pretty heavy at some points, and you might want to take a little break. That brings me to one of the best parts of this game. That would be all the minigames and the sub-stories. The karaoke minigame is the first minigame you have to play. It is a great start to understanding and setting the feel that you get when playing these minigames. All the songs here are pretty good, and if I was going to rank them from least favorite to my favorite, it would be Judgment, 24 Hour Cinderella, and the best song being Baka Mitai. The minigames is a rhythm game of having to press the right buttons at the right time. This was introduced because of a waterfall minigame where you need to reject desires that was seen in Yakuza's Samurai spin-off game. The successor to the karaoke would be the disco. In this game, there are less songs, but they're all really good, but I think the only one that I would play slower would be Take Me Home. In this game, you want to move as much as possible before having the move to the right square, pressing the button just as the shape overlaps. At some point, you get this thing called a fever time, in which you have to press the directional pad in the right direction as the square overlaps the button. If you do it at the right time, your score gets multiplied. Depending if you're playing as Kiryu or Majima, the little mascot guy in the corner there you see right there, he has a little eye patch or not. The next thing I want to talk about would be the place where you play Mahjong and Shogi. I never played either of these games, but I know that you'll get some nice sub-stories from playing these games. There's also a fun RC car mini game too, and this game, you have to buy new parts and make your RC car the best. This is also a phone mini game where you try to get dates, and to be honest, I really don't remember why you're trying to get dates, but doing this probably leads to also some other sub-stories that I didn't get to. But I don't know if I read the instructions correctly or if my camera stick was just drifting, but I just couldn't get the dial to turn. There's also a women's wrestling place where you go, you can place bets, and if the person you bet on wins, you get money, or you lose the money if they lose. They say that this is the best way to make money, and I disagree with that. I'll explain why. This minigame is just rock, paper, scissors, so if you think of a game of chance as the best way to make money, then go right ahead. Another dumb thing about this minigame too is that the characters have these special abilities. For example, there's this one character, and her ability is that she makes a comeback. So when you go against her, no matter what lead you have, you could just defeat the person you put money on. So you might just lose a lot of money in like 15 minutes, but I think the best way to make money would be the Real Estate Royal or the Cabaret Club. I think they're the best way because you're guaranteed to make money, even if you screw up something. And sure, you won't double your money like you would in the wrestling minigame, but that minigame, like I said, you can lose a lot of money really easily. I think that with the Real Estate Royal, that story is just really fun in general. Having to fight all the 5 millionaires, I think the same for the Cabaret story, but that minigame has more with it and it's more challenging. But that story is also fun. We're fighting and defending the Sunshine Cabaret from other awful club managers. I honestly think I spoke too soon when I said that the best part of this game is the combat. Because I think the best part of this game is the sub-stories. These are just so much fun. Let me give you a few examples of what some stories might have you do. You might have to defend a person named Miracle Johnson from Zombies in his new music video while he's moonwalking down the street of Kamurocho. You also help a band that dresses up as delinquents but turn out to be really sweet people. They tell you that they have a show that they're going to do, and they're asking Kiryu how they should respond. There's also another one where you have to help mother's daughter out of a cult. There's also another one you have to help a kid get a magazine because his mom said he wouldn't, because you realize in the end it's actually a really bad magazine. There's also another one where you have to pretend to be a girl's boyfriend, so her father doesn't try to set up with another boyfriend. Another one where you have to pretend to be a movie director, that one's really fun. There's also another one to write to a radio show host where they read about one of the sub-stories that you have done. Some time will pass and at some point you'll get a short cutscene where they talk about the story you've written. There's also another sub-story where you help the dominatrix become more assertive and mean, therefore being better at her job. There are also so many other sub-stories. Some of the people in these sub-stories become managers, and so the sub-stories give the real charm of this game. And if you choose to play this game, I implore you to play these sub-stories when possible. They can be funny, sad, or just heartwarming. Let's say you beat every side mission in the game, and you do everything that's pretty much needs to be done. And you ask yourselves, well, what comes next? Well, there are these challenge missions you can do. For example, one of them is where you can only damage enemies by hitting them with objects. Also, some of them the missions are timed. I don't have much to say about these, but they're fun if you want to try them. You know, since you're still here, you might be thinking of where to start, and I would say that you should start with this game as it's a prequel. Sure, you might not fully appreciate things in the story, but I think that this game is the safest option as to where to start, and since this game was made later, the combat still feels great and not outdated. This would just be an introduction to all the characters too. So if you're going to start, then start at 0. Okay, yeah, I get it. I didn't touch on everything. There's so much more. Like, I didn't talk about this weird thing where, you know, Kazuma fights a bear, and that stuff I can leave out. But I just have to say that, you know, this game is probably one of my favorites, and maybe it might be yours too. And if you're thinking about starting, you know, the Yakuza series, start at 0. Well, just be in for one hell of a ride. And hey, I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you have a good night.
子供なのね夢を追って傷ついて嘘が下手なくせに笑えない笑顔を見せた I love you もろくに言わない口下手でほんまに不器用なのにどうしてさよならは言えたのダメだねダメよダメなのよあんたが好きで好きすぎてどれだけ強いお酒でも歪まない思い